All right. You all want werewolves. I've seen it. I've seen so many posts on the Reddits and just the YouTubes, the internet in general. We got vampires. Where are the werewolves? We got vampires. Where are the werewolves? Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Kurojaku, and today I present to you werewolves. This is gonna be a little different. I'm gonna do this build guide a little different than I have the previous ones, the Elder Scrolls ones. I'm still doing more Elder Scrolls ones. Don't worry. Nords are actually on the way. However, because we do have a new expansion, I kind of want to do some things new expansion-like, and, well, I had a really good idea for werewolves. Now, there may be a little more yapping as I explain my reasoning behind some decisions I've made along the way. If you like what you see, you can always like and subscribe. There'll be more builds in the future, like I mentioned. If you have any other ideas of your own, put them in the comments. I definitely appreciate more ideas to work off of. I do have a few lined up for this vampire DLC, but by all means, keep dropping them in there. And let me know what you think, or if you'd make any adjustments to the werewolf build. This is what I could come up with, but hey, maybe there are things I completely overlooked or just didn't consider. Anyways, now let's talk about werewolves. Now, real quick, normally I do the appearance stuff at the end, but we're actually going to skip to the appearance. And spoiler alert, the ruler is ascended and has the big man transformation. I don't remember what it's called, but we'll get to that when we talk about tomes. And I do this specifically because if you look at the lupines, they're kind of slim and athletic built. So in order to fix that, what you do is if you come over, and we'll use the race as an example because, you know, you go to body shape and you just set it to this one. This is like the ogre orcoid body size instead. And then what I also did, maximum arm length, maximum head size, because it makes it more proportionate. And then I kind of dialed down these just a little bit, and it really did bring the whole werewolf look to life. They do actually look like werewolves now. And of course, like I said, we then add our Tome of Vigor race transformation, and oh, they become big beefy boys. He looks like right out of a book that a TikTok girl would have on her shelf, doesn't he? And if that's what he looks like, then I've done my job. Anyways, let's discuss the actual build. I just wanted to get the customization out of the way. Okay, so first things first, traits are very simple and very straightforward. Athletics, because we are going to be mostly an infantry-based faction, and this is going to synergize very well with the culture. You already saw a sneak peek at the culture, but we'll get to that soon. All this does is make all of our ground units much quicker. Following that with strong to make all of our physical attacks, both ranged and melee, do more damage. I did want pack tactics because they are wolves, but I couldn't fit that in, and I really wanted strong, and I really wanted athletics, so this ended up being the way it is. For the culture, we go barbarian. Now, I had to kind of suspend disbelief for werewolves because we don't really have true werewolves or unarmed units. In fact, the only unarmed units we have are heroes using a giant metal glove, not fitting, and even less fitting would be monks, which are quite possibly the exact opposite of what a werewolf should be. So instead, I went for the design choice of werewolves that have begun to use tools and form society. They're still savage, hence the barbarian culture, but they are combining the craftiness of man and the strength of beast into one ultimate being. That's kind of the lore, the loose lore that I've come up with for the werewolf build. Plays really well though, it's a lot of fun. Now this did come down between barbarians or primals, and really the big reason why I went barbarians over primals has to do with the units. So we pop over, really the two big deal breakers was the primal darter, which I don't think using a blowgun with a snout is going to work very well. And ancestral wardens are great, however, they're very defensive. When I compare that to the barbarian unit tree, javelin throwers just make way more sense. Hold on. Javelin throwers make way more sense because they're using all that back strength and upper body strength of a werewolf to hurl giant pointed sticks into people. Warriors are fine. War shamans are fine. Longbows, again, a lot of upper body strength, so it kind of, there is like some sort of logic here. And then of course, if I'm thinking of giving a weapon to a werewolf, I feel like a giant battle axe is the perfect weapon that I would give werewolves. So that is what kind of the deciding factor was, and we are going to be heavily using Sunders early game. You can mix in a bit of Furies and Berserkers especially, and then these will all get replaced with Tome units down the line. For the society traits, Ritual Cannibals, they are werewolves. They are going to gorge themselves on the enemies that they have slain. It fits the werewolves perfectly. All this does is it lets you eat corpses, but also gives you mana and food to the nearest city when you kill non-magic origin units. The Chaos Development Tree also gives you basically the same effect, but for gold as well. So once you have both of these going, you get mana, gold, and food every time you win a battle, as long as you're fighting non-magic origin. And the thing that really tied werewolves together was the brand new society trait added, Apex Predators. It literally has a wolf on the picture. This gives us food for every province we pillage, and when you raise a city, you will gain that same amount of food per province it has, so you don't have to manually raise all of the provinces. Raising the city gives a flood of food back to your nearest city, and this can become stacked with some other things and ways to get food and mana and everything out of cities just by raising them to the ground. It's such a fun play style. You rampage around and you eat everything that isn't you. I briefly touched on appearances. We do use a champion ruler. Right here, our big boy, a warrior with a berserker great axe. I'm gonna put on the screen this time the unit tree. All my heroes are also warriors. The main thing you want to go down is the knight tree for all the charge things, especially displace and replace worked really well. It's like a werewolf just tackling into you, pinning you down, and then getting you ripped apart. All that movement speed makes it so those Sunders can flank around, weaken something, and then your big shock units just come in and clean up the job. Basically, every army ended up revolving around the warrior heroes just rampaging through things with killing momentum and routing enemies. This guy is awesome. And before I talk about tomes, you can fill this in with whatever you like. This is something I kind of just came up with on a afternoon whim, because I didn't really have this written out. You can see I didn't even do the faction biography this time, so I haven't really figured it out. I'm not working off of a standing lore. I'm kind of making up this as I go. Now for the tomes. I'm going to do a lot of explaining. Bear with me. First things first, Tome of Bloodright. I understand you may think this is a vampire tome. I think this fits werewolves beautifully. The main themes of this build, you can see we're heavy into chaos and nature. I am mostly focused around blood magic, or blood and nature. Those are the two themes we're going to be revolving this whole build around. It's why I think really fits the werewolves the best. I'm kind of pulling from multiple different werewolf archetype lores, including Underworld and Elder Scrolls at times, to kind of form this and figure out the tech tree. And again, also the idea is these are werewolves that are forming a, while brutal and primal society, it is still a society, and they are still trying to advance their technology. So, first things first, we take Bloodright. Flesh-carved runes is going to give us some of that werewolf regeneration we're looking for. Blood drinking blades is also going to help. We're going to have a lot of ways to inflict bleed in this build. You can use blood cultists if you want, but they are not the core of the build. We are not really caring about casters, so I really wouldn't bother with them. However, they do look really fucking cool. With all our race transformations, they look really cool. Really, what you are here for is flesh-carved runes, blood-drinking blades. The structure, the blood altar is kind of nice. In Elder Scrolls Online, you use werewolf shrine altars to actually get lycanthropy. So this was kind of fitting. This also gives you extra mana when victorious in battle, so it stacks with a lot of the elements that we're already working with. Our other tier 1 tome is Tome of Rock. Mainly here for obsidian weapons, which is going to give us bleeding, so now all of our units can inflict bleeding and then get lifesteal effects off of bleeding targets and ignore status resistance on bleeding targets. This is the synergy between Tome of Rock, Tome of Bloodright. The rest of this tome, we kind of ignore. The only other thing we want is Earthkin. Now, I always hide a lot of these transformations. This is one of them. But the +1 defense and all the mountain walk and camouflage just helps alongside athletics to make our werewolves feel very agile, very quick moving across the map. I'll come back to Revelry in a second because Glades kind of relates into that. However, you can take these in either order. Tome of Glades is going to give us Leaf Skin, which will give us +1 resistance. So we're getting 1 defense, now we get 1 resistance. We get Forest Walk and Forest Camouflage so we can move through mountains and forests very quickly. I also turn this transformation off visually. The other really nice thing here is actually the Glade Runners. These are going to be our go-to tier 3s. Effectively look at these as an upgrade to your Sunderers. Tracker's Mark also inflicts Sunder defense, but it can't miss. And it applies Marked so that everyone else has a higher chance to hit with projectiles. So you mark a target, then you fill them with arrows. These are essentially your upgrade to using Sunderers as your main ranged unit. Now you're going to use Glade Runners. The rest of this tome isn't really that important, though Sacred Meadows do work really well with the Blood Altar because this is a farm, it wants adjacent conduits, this is a conduit, and it wants adjacent farms. Speaking of farms, who also want adjacent farms, so these all kind of work together, we have Tome of Revelry. The big thing we're looking for here, Revels of Blood is a very nice siege project, which inflicts bleed on all enemies once we complete the siege. Reveler's Heart gives all our units increased morale. However, we're gonna kind of lose this morale boost later in the game, so it's kind of just a you take it because it's there type thing. Really, we're here for Blood Fury weapons. Makes you do even more physical damage, and when you kill things, they turn into a blood bomb, inflicting 2 stacks of bleeding on everything nearby. Next is Tome of Vigor. The main reason we want Tome of Vigor is Super Growth. That's what it's called. We already have 1 defense and 1 resistance. Now we get +10 HP and the extra retaliation attack. Your heroes can get up to a full 3 retaliation attacks with this. Also makes all our guys huge, makes them fit the giant werewolf aesthetic even better. Rest of this tome, do with it what you will. We're not really playing with animals, but if you like animal builds, you do have the tools to leverage them. Now for Tome of Devastation. Might seem a little weird at first. Allow me to justify. Devastator Spheres are very crude looking siege weapons. I think it fits a primal barbaric werewolf well enough as a siege weapon could. So I think they're fitting. Flame Burst weapons are great. They're going to give us that increased crit. Crit builds are always very strong on barbarians because you get Savage Strike, which gives you even more damage. Obviously, any critical bonus that you can get on a barbarian unit is always a plus. And this affects our skirmishers and our shock units. And speaking of shock units, Warbreeds. Not my favorite mythic in the game, but here they serve their purpose as just a giant armored werewolf. They have a charge strike that inflicts bleed. They have a power cleat that inflicts bleeds. They also come with natural regeneration, a very werewolf-esque trait. They are big, they are tanky, they take all of your race transformations, they're a very simple, straightforward upgrade to your tier 3 berserkers. Now here's where things get a little weird. I went with Tome of Crimson Rain. This is where like the underworld werewolves kind of come into play. If you've ever seen those movies where werewolves and vampires are kind of 2 sides of the same coin. So I did this to do like ancient werewolf blood kind of aspect. They look awesome. I kept the race transformation on. These things look so sick. The reason we go with this, Gift of the Old Blood, to give our units Life Drinker, to give our units Blood Parasites. The undead unit type does make us immune to poison and disease, which is a known werewolf trait, so while technically we are now undead, we don't look like undead. Mantle of the Old Blood also kind of plays into this role, especially if you still want to use a lot of skirmishers. You can use skirmishers and then your Warbreeds, and those Warbreeds get extra health and healing, which is great, as well as Coagulate, which is essentially bolstered defense and resistance in a single skill with no requirement. Any physical or magic damage will trigger this, so it's awesome. Makes your units very hard to remove. And Crimson Cord is great. It'll make it easier to level up all those new tier 3, tier 4 units that you have running around. And this is what's going to give us Crimson Court Magistrate, which lets us gain mana when raising cities. So there was at one point where I raised the city late game. I got like 2,000 food and 2,000 mana just for raising a city on top of the gold that you get. It is absurd how many resources you are pulling just from raising the city on top of the enemies killed from having ritual cannibals, also returning mana and food, and then the development tree giving you gold. You just get a ton of free resources just for killing shit. Next is Tome of Nature's Wrath. Really, we're just here to pick up Horned Gods. If you really want a tier 5 sort of support unit, this is an option. There's not a lot here. This was kind of the point of the build where I was running out of things. The build's kind of online by this point. I don't really need anything else. And then Tome of Chaos Lord. I just took this for the achievement. You could also do Tome of... what is it called? What is it called? You could also do Tome of the Goddess of Nature. However, you don't really get a lot out of this either. Just because the best thing, Force of Nature, which is awesome by the way, we don't have animal units. I really wish they would give us a way to make our units animal units outside of Naga transformations, which I did not want to do because I don't want snake people werewolves. That's kind of the one big flaw. If we ever do get some way to make our units animals, be it a society trait, be it a racial trait, I really think we need a racial trait that turns our units into animal class units, because we have so many beast forms available. We have lupines, we have avians, we've got goats. The fact that there's not a racial trait to let me turn my units by default into animals is kind of unfortunate. If there was, we would take that nature tome. Otherwise, I just take the tier 5 chaos tome because I get more value out of it. But that is all I have for today. That is my werewolf build. If you have any questions on how it works, you can always let me know and I will be happy to answer them. Otherwise, thank you for watching. More builds on the way. Until next time.